Welcome to Positive Philter with your host, Philip Wilkerson, a podcast that focuses on friends, family, health, and career, with a little self-help along the way. Please join me in this journey for self-improvement, and I hope what I have to share will make you a better person, thus making the world a better place. I hope you enjoy the show. I hope you enjoy the show. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's Philip Wilkerson back with another episode of Positive Philter. I am joined by a special guest. Everyone is a special guest to me because they're on their show, on my show, and they take their time to get to know me and share their wisdom and knowledge with the audience. But I'm joined by Mrs. Dr. Marian, the librarian. I like that. We chatted on. And so I met this wonderful, wonderful doctor or professor or higher ed professional. I'm going to just give her a bunch of titles, but I met her in a digital space. And we met on LinkedIn and we met on Twitter. She has her own podcast. You know, I love to collaborate with other podcasters, but just by her vibe and energy and the things that she's doing with her podcast, I believe it's called Dive In Career Podcast, to, you know, connect with other higher professionals. I was like, you know, I had to collaborate with her. I had to get her on the podcast. And I just also had to amplify her voice because she's doing great work with her voice out in the digital space. But before I go into the kind of the meat of this episode, I want to give her a chance to introduce herself to the listeners. So Dr. Higgins, the good doctor, is there anything, you know, just to introduce yourself to the listeners?
Sure. Well, thank you, Phil, for the opportunity to be a guest on your podcast. And yeah, I'm glad we had an opportunity to connect as well. So a little bit about me. I am the host of Dive In, which is a podcast that focuses on diversity, equity, and inclusion as they relate to career development professionals. However, people have found that podcast applicable to their work, even if they're in part of the higher ed space or outside of the higher ed space. So it is a podcast that has been of interest to a lot of listeners. So that is something that I'm excited about. I also have a practice called Be Inspired Counseling and Consulting, and this is also where I do more of the diversity, equity, inclusion work, and have been featured as a speaker for professional associations across the U.S. And I'm also a professor. I'm a professor at the University of Georgia, and specifically in the Counseling and Human Development program. And I coordinate our EDD and Student Affairs program.
Sheesh. A woman with many hats. That's my type of person. Obviously, you know me. I'm ripping and running. I got many hats too, and I definitely wanted to get you on the podcast to particularly talk about one of your hats. You know, I know you got multiple hats, but there's also a great opportunity. I kind of want to name this. Was it like the Janet Jackson song? It's Miss Janet, if you're nasty, whatever, nasty boys. Well, I'm gonna call this, is Doctor. If you like, you gotta address you as such. And I think that's something so amazing. I was gonna do some statistics about how there's, the numbers of people of color with doctorate degrees. And maybe I'll do that later for myself. But I wanted to talk about particularly your journey to becoming a doctor. One, it could be helpful for me. Wink, wink. I might want to be a doctor just like you one day. Or two, to all the listeners out there that have had questions about this experience and just want to hear it from someone such as yourself, because it is no small feat that what you did. I've talked to some people about doctorate degrees, and I know it's no joke. So you specifically said, what is your doctorate degree in?
So my doctorate is in counseling and student personnel services, specifically with the emphasis in student affairs. So that is what my background is in my doctorate.
Nice. And so let's take us through your journey and maybe dial it back. When they say career day and you was in high school or middle school or whatever, did you ever foresee yourself going this far in education and getting a doctorate?
Well, in elementary school and middle school, I knew that I wanted to be an educator, specifically a
Hmm.
teacher. It sounds like you can relate to that. I, wanted to teach, but wasn't sure exactly what I would want to teach. But I had those moments where I played teacher and, had siblings who were my students or stuffed animals or whatever that were students. And dry erase boards and books and things. And so I knew that I wanted to be an educator.
Hmm.
And it wasn't until I was in high school that I became aware of a doctorate degree.
Mm.
And so it was in high school that my mom was pursuing her doctorate.
Oh,
And so that's how I learned about doctorate degrees is from my mom's experiences. And so at that point, I said, you know what? I want to get the highest degree that I can achieve for whatever field that I go into. So at the
okay.
time, I didn't even know about student affairs, right? So this was just in high school. And I'm thinking, okay, she's going for this degree. I want to be able to get the highest degree for whatever, I want to pursue. And so that's where I landed. That was a goal in high school.
Sheesh. That's such black excellence. Oh my goodness. I'm smiling. You see me cheesing. They can't see me cheesing here. And the reason why I think that's remarkable is that, I have some people fall into their lives and some people are a little bit more focused. And it's so remarkable when I meet people that are more laser focused. Like that's just a great, great thing. And also, I think it's awesome that you share that accomplishment with your mother. What was your mother's doctorate in?
Her doctorate is in reading education.
Mm. And
Hmm.
and so you saw that. So uh, when you saw your mom going through this experience, what was some of the things that you watched her do? That was like, wow, this is what it's like to get a doctorate. Did you see her studying or writing a lot? Like, what did you see as a kid to say, wow, this is what it takes to be a doctor myself?
Yeah, I saw a lot happen, Phil, actually, because my mom was also a single parent, raising five children and pursuing a doctorate. And so I did see her studying, or there were times when she had to be away from home to go and to her classes or to go and do her research. And one of the things that stood out for me, though, was her relationship with the faculty. She would always talk to us about her experiences with her faculty members, and she would, talk to them about us too. And so I remember going to the building where she would do her work and where she would have conversations with faculty and colleagues and being introduced to them. But I do remember those faculty members who were her mentors, and to
Hmm.
this day she still has conversations with them or is connected with them in some way. And so that was important for me to see. Is like, how you develop relationships with individuals, especially faculty, um, and how that can help you even, as an undergraduate student. Because I was in high school when this process started, but then moved into
Hmm.
college when she was finishing up her doctorate. So I got a
Okay.
chance to see, as I'm transitioning to college, the importance and significance of
Hmm.
developing those relationships.
That's excellent. So you remember particularly going to her commencement and seeing her get it and the donning and all that stuff, right?
Oh yeah, all of that, all of that. So from day one to the end, I remember
Mm.
all of that. I remember the call when she, um, successfully defended her dissertation. All of that is it's etched in my memory, because those were significant moments for her and significant moments for us as a family.
Now, so this is a podcast about you. We're going to bring it back to your journey. So you enter college, and you said, "I'm going to obtain the highest degree in my field." What was your when you got your undergraduate degree? Did you already start planning out like connecting the dots from your undergraduate to that doctorate? Like, okay, connecting your undergraduate major to that long-term goal?
Yes, so I was a history major and I attended Wesleyan University in Middletown, Connecticut. And so at my institution, there's the Mellon program, and some
Mhm.
people may be familiar with the Mellon program, but the Mellon program is designed to prepare undergraduate students from underrepresented populations for pursuing a doctorate in like the humanities
Mhm.
and in the social sciences. And so I participated in that program, and that program was helping me get on track to pursue a doctorate in what I thought was going to be history.
Hey,
So I
hey,
thought I was going to pursue a PhD in history is what I was headed towards.
hey, and you know I'm cheesing too, because shout out to the history majors. I was a history major as well.
Oh,
Um,
awesome.
yeah, but also I also had no clue. I like this is literally, and this podcast is literally. I feel like we are like the yin and yang. Like we are literally so similar and so different because you had this track in history. This I just took history because the professor was cool, and I switched, and I had no clue what I was going to do afterwards. I had like
Mm-hmm.
no, I didn't even know what I was going to do after college with my history degree. I just knew in the moment. I was always in the moment. Like I liked the classes. So with the history degree, you got that. Obviously, the middle step between a master of undergraduate degree and your doctorate is the master's. So you got the degree in history. Where do you start gearing your master's toward your master's focus?
Well, I applied to master's programs as well as a master's PhD program that would prepare me for obtaining a degree in history. And at that moment, I thought, this is not what I want to do. I do not want to continue studying history in this way. And so I was accepted into a program where I would become a social studies educator working in high schools. And so I thought that was it, but I decided not to pursue that. One, the cost to attend this institution was going to be a lot at the time, and so I decided not to go that route, and ended up going back home and staying at home thinking about, okay, what's next. And
Mm-hmm.
so what's next was actually a career advisor position. So I became a
Mm,
career advisor immediately after college. About 2 months after graduating, became a career advisor and did that for a year. And while I was working as a career advisor, I decided to take a
mm,
career course, a
that's
master's
good.
level career course.
Yes.
And in that course, we did Myers Briggs, we did some of the other assessments, and then it dawned on me, I like working with college students. I didn't know anything about obtaining a master's in student affairs, but I began to do the research on that. And so that's when I learned about a master's in student affairs. But I also had an interest in counseling.
Yes.
And so I was like, okay, I'm starting to research counseling programs. There are counseling programs with a student affairs emphasis. And so that's where I landed. I decided to pursue a master's in counseling with a student affairs emphasis.
Oh man, I'm cheesing too because I feel like who put us together because similar to you, I found I liked working with people, went to get my master's, and it was that career counseling class in my master's program that said I want to work in higher ed, and I got my internship. So that class not only it was weird because we were doing what we would teach other people or help other people in careers,
Mm-hmm.
but we had to do that exploration on ourselves. And I was like, I love this Myers-Briggs stuff and all that stuff. And so I love all the different theories and Brown's value sort. And I was like, I want to do career stuff. And I wanted to work at the career center. And da, da, da. So it's crazy. That same mirror of both of us finding a class that was meant to teach us to help others really helped us give us a little bit of guidance for ourselves. So you started doing that. And you decided, okay, I'm gonna stick with higher ed. And you did that and you started career. When was it that like obviously you already had in your mind set to get the doctorate all along? When did you say, okay, I'm ready to pursue the doctorate? Like, can you take us like you got your master's, you worked a little bit. When was like the initiation, like, okay, now I'm ready for the doctorate part? Or did you roll right into your doctorate after you got your master's?
Well, what's interesting is, as I was finishing up my master's degree, I said, I'm going to wait about 5 years and then
Hmm.
I'm going to pursue a
Hmm.
doctorate. And, I said, I need to get some experience. Let me just
Hmm.
wait, 5 years. And
Hmm.
so I had shared this with my then supervisor for the assistantship that I held. And she said, I just don't see you waiting 5 years. And she was right. So I moved into a position, career counseling position. Um, and within the first year of being in that position, I started getting the itch. And I said, it's time for me to go back to school. I miss being in the learning environment. I miss having conversations around student affairs, and I just need to get back to this environment. So I immediately applied to a doctoral program and was admitted to the program. And so that's when I decided I'm going to just move forward.
Now, let's speak upon it. We're not going to dance around it. There's not many people of color, uh, I guess, in doctorate positions. And shout out to the black women carrying the black men. And I say that because when I look at all these statistics about, they're in the classroom, they're saying, we have diversity, we have black people in our program. You look, it's mostly black women. Black women are probably one of the most educated professionals around. So, but let's pull it back to your experience. Were you a minority in your program? When you looked around your classes and your particular doctoral program, were you the one or few token black women or black people in general, both women and men? Take us to that experience.
Sure. So in my program, we have a cohort model. At the time, we had a cohort model, and I was one of five Black women in the program in my
Mm-hmm.
cohort. So, yeah, there was, we took courses together throughout the
Mm-hmm.
the cohort, and as each year, of course, other Black students. Um,
Mm-hmm.
were enrolled in the program as well. And so yeah, we there was always somebody, that I can remember that looked like me as I went through the program.
What about black men? How many were there in the program? What's your experience?
So in my cohort, there weren't any Black men, but in the
Mm-hmm.
cohorts following me, there would be maybe one or two Black men who were in the cohorts, that were after mine. And then sometimes there may not have been a Black man in the cohort, and then there were also Black men who were in the cohorts before mine as well. So and I was able to befriend them as well.
Putting our putting our putting our sociology hat on or context hat on, why do you think, or what has set up this system of more black women attaining higher education, higher degrees compared to their black male counterparts? And also, additionally, putting our hats on, and this is anecdotal, obviously, just, it's not like, I know you wanted to pull out some research. I'm just talking straight anecdotal, like why you think this is the case. And then what can we do to lower that if there is a stigma about it or obstacle to that, particularly because I've noticed that even in my experience, I was the one of many in just my master's program, So I took one class. I took one class for fun, just to see if I wanted to dip my foot in and I was the only black male besides the actual professor, which was dope. At least have a black male professor. But I don't know. Those are things I'm thinking about. What do you think has set up that system, and what do you think we can do for that?
Sure. I think there are a lot of things that factor into this. Now, again, like you said, this is anecdotally, this is not necessarily,
Yeah.
my research
There
area
you
or
go. Yeah.
area of,
I definitely gave you that because I know you was like, no, I'm not going to just spit off if I got no facts. So we definitely said anecdotal. So yeah, but just off your observation and experience.
Yeah, I think one of the things, and you and I have talked about this too, is that the message that we have to work twice, Black people have to
Hmm.
work twice as hard and have to present ourselves in ways that others may not have to. And so, because the message that has been communicated for generations, for
Hmm.
years, right? There are people who want to go and pursue doctorates because that's what we believe we need to have in order to have a voice in certain circles. And
Hmm.
I think there's opportunity there for us to do that, and so Black women take advantage of that. I believe
Hmm.
Black men do as well. um and so I think that's one of the things. I think too, we also have to look at what are the barriers in place.
Hmm. Yeah.
We also have to look at, when we start even at undergraduate level, what are the stats and numbers of
Hmm.
Black women versus Black men, um, even pursuing an undergraduate degree. And so if there's a small percentage there, then there could be even smaller numbers when we get to the graduate level, because, you don't have as many who pursued an
Hmm.
undergraduate degree, which is required in order to pursue a
Hmm.
master's or a doctoral degree as well. I think also, thinking about mentorship
Yes.
and
Yes.
having people to mentor and to tell you, right, that you are capable, you're more than
Hmm.
capable of pursuing a doctoral degree. And so when you think about some of the messages that are communicated, whether it's directly or indirectly to um, Black people, a lot of times those messages aren't that you are capable of pursuing a doctoral degree or even a master's degree. And so it does require us to have that desire and a motivation to want to do it. I think we also have to recognize the systems that are at play, the
Hmm.
barriers that are in place. There's so many barriers, when we think about the financial piece,
Hmm.
require admissions requirements, even anything from GRE, letters of
Hmm.
recommendations. All those things can factor into um, as barriers for some, for whatever reasons. And so I think we have to take a look at that as well.
I see. I love that. See, even as an anecdotal answer, you was killing it. Like I just thought, and it was like in my mind, it popped up. The main one that jumped out of my head was just like how you see it. If you see someone like you do it, then you believe you can do it. But how often do we get in front of people to see them? So, for instance, you had your mother. I mean, could you just think about, like, just by her living her experience, you saw someone that was me. I can picture myself. You can actually visualize her experience and say, you know what? My mom did it. I came from her. I can do it too. And I think what creates barriers is I never knew that certain obstacles were not obstacles, certain opportunities were available until that mentorship aspect. Like now I'm like, I've seen people I call quote unquote mentors. Let me just call them older friends, where I'm like, oh, that's my man. That's my homie, and I would give one of my mentors on campus, Lewis Forrest. Oh, he's got this position and this is how he talks to me and he gives me the insides and outs. But I'd see him as a normal person, and that humanization of it too is like, yo, if he can do it and we're good friends and he's at my level with just his how he talks to me, I can get there too. But I don't think a lot of people just get in front of, I don't know, I don't think a lot of students get in front of PhD people. Like, I don't know if that makes sense.
Well, and you think about how many Black faculty are
Yeah.
on campus, right?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so, for some students, they never have a Black professor in their discipline. And
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
and what you're talking about is that vicarious learning, right? You
Yeah.
see it role modeled from
Hmm.
someone else. And so you're thinking, if that person can do it, then I can do it. And so, yeah, that I think that is helpful. It is beneficial. But if you don't see that, it's like, well, how do I navigate these spaces?
Yeah. So maybe even speak upon this. Um, and maybe the barriers also, typically a lot of people get higher ed degrees, I don't think a lot of people roll right into it. So speaking from your experience, was one of your barriers, like, how do you balance like your normal life, starting a family life, or if or a lot of people are working full time to go back and get a doctorate. What were some of those, like, not racial barriers, but just life barriers during your pursuit of the doctorate?
Yeah, there were definitely some challenging moments. One, like you mentioned, working full time and pursuing a doctorate part time. And so
Mm-hmm.
balancing school as well as work. And then, of course, as you mentioned, family. That was another piece too, because I started a family at the beginning of my doctoral journey and just continued throughout. Um, and so, balancing all of those roles. And I think the thing that was helpful is having a support system. So having a
Mm-hmm.
support system at work as well as having a support system at home helped me to be able to continue and complete the degree. That was just very important to me being able to do what I wanted to do and pursue my goals.
So you talk, I mean, obviously, naturally, you know, your mom is a mentor organically, but did you seek out externally, like people other than your mother, to be mentors during your actual pursuit yourself? And how was that helpful for you to see it, maybe someone differently removed than your mom, but someone else to help you, give you some support?
Sure. I do refer to her as my second advisor because she was during that process. And then, there were other people that I met along the way, one of my friends, my good friends who had already gone through the doctoral experience, was also a mentor and just and helping me with, dissertation work, research, and study, just giving me advice for how to pursue that. So I think that was helpful to have a friend who had gone through the process already. And then, of course, I had friends at other institutions who were going through the process as well. And so having their um, just the just the opportunity for us to come together and talk and share our experiences and was very helpful to each other, and so yes, I had support system within my program, but then also outside of my program, it was good to have that support, people I could call on and say, hey, I'm taking this course right now and I have no idea what I'm doing, or I am dealing with this challenge. How have you dealt with this challenge? So I think it was helpful to have that as well.
So, and just have you naturally seen people gravitate to you as a mentor now? Have you noticed that when you're being a professor in a classroom, you get that one or two students that starts to kind of ask you questions like, "Can I do this too?" Or have you started to feel that experience already, or not really yet?
Yeah, I have noticed that and have students who will have conversations with me. I want to learn more about what you do and how you got to where you are, similar to the conversation that we're having today. And students will, come to me for various reasons. Perhaps we have shared identities, whether
Yeah.
it's,
Yeah.
me being a Black woman or me being a mother who went through the program. And so they can identify with that, or the fact that I work full time and went through the program.
Yeah.
And so students will have conversations with me and just say, hey, how'd you do it,
Yeah.
and even students outside of the program have connected with me as well, and see me as their mentor, and we may schedule monthly meetings, or when maybe not monthly, it just depends on our
Life.
availability, but
Yeah.
right,
Yeah. Yeah.
but we will schedule time to chat and check in, and especially if they are in programs where there aren't other Black faculty, and
Mm-hmm.
they've stated that I need somebody that I can talk to who understands where I am. And so we'll have those conversations as well.
Have you noticed? And I was about to say, I was smiling because one is that I've noticed that I've helped students outside my normal career goal. And I think I've normally, organically, I've seen students that have like nothing to do with career. I noticed they gravitated to me because they just saw me on campus. Oh, it's a black
Mhm.
dude, like, and I don't know if you carry this weight, but I carry this weight, and not a bad weight. I'm saying a positive weight, responsibility. Like, I want to help them as students holistically outside of just my normal job. So they be asking me about questions that are like not really related to career stuff, but I feel like I have to be a resource in a positive way. So like, yo, I'm having a issue with my, my friends. I give my 2 cents and then I try to refer them to like, the real resource. So I'm like, I feel like I'm a vessel to make sure that I don't want to speak upon other people's jobs and step on other people's roles at the university, but I also know that like I might be their first instinct of talking to someone that's an adult, so that I carry that responsibility. Like, oh man, I'm really having a hard time with housing. Like, okay, da da da. Did you think about this? And additionally, did you go and like I start referring them to the real housing people? Do you feel like that happens to you too? And I think you did say that kind of briefly. Like, even outside of your program, people are just gravitating to you based on shared identities.
Yeah, I would agree with you. Even, in the career center
Mm-hmm.
space, as well as,
Mm-hmm.
now in the faculty space, the students will see you and say, okay, you must know, or you have to know. And then, because I've been at my current institution for so long, I think too, students know, okay, she also has that history
Mm-hmm.
and knows about navigating the institution. And so I think that's another piece. But yeah, yeah, students will contact me, ask me questions. And the other piece too is that people who are looking to send their students to the
Yeah,
institution,
yeah.
they
Oh snap!
contact you.
Oh, please, please do not remind me of how many times I get some random aunt and uncle that say, "You work at a college, right?" I say, "Yeah," and then they just ask me like about parking services or something. I'm like, "Yeah." I just because I'm like, yo, you don't know how many people say, yo, and my nickname, I'm Little Phil. My dad's Big Phil, Little Phil. But Little Phil, can you? I was like, yeah, this has nothing to do with it. I don't even know what you're talking about. And then I got to do the research and look at like stuff about college. And I'm looking at financial aid. I'm like, what am I? Now I got to know about the Pell Grant. I don't even mess with this stuff no more. So I find that funny too. But it's almost like you feel like we got one of ours into the system, and they feel like because you're one that you're their resource. And what I think with that though is that I'm not going to turn them down because I might be that one person to turn them off of a complete experience. So like if I didn't help my auntie or uncle, my cousin, or I didn't help that random student that had nothing to do with me, then they might not even get the real help that they need because they felt like someone dismissed them. Like, so I have an opportunity to like be that first, what is it, like point of contact.
Hmm.
And I understand that like with that point of contact that like I can make or break someone's experience in college. Um, and they'll say, well, this whole university sucked because no one helped me. Well, if I could be one person to help them, hopefully I can point them to some people I know that are helpful.
That's right. That's right.
So
Yeah.
So I think about that too. So I'll be trying to slow myself down. Like, dang, man, why did you asking me this question? But then I'm like, okay, I got to understand this experience. Like, I am that one. I'm not the gatekeeper, but I am I am their in. And so I definitely have a responsibility to pull other people into that or help them or whatever. And you never know how that's going to change someone's whole experience because organically, because you were nice to them, they might end up being a doctor 10 years from now, just like you. So that's pretty
Hmm.
awesome.
Hmm.
Would you do that again? Would you do this whole journey again? Would you get your doctorate again?
I would. I honestly can say that I would. This degree has given me
Mm-hmm.
a lot of insight. There was a lot of personal growth, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
professional growth, um, definitely insight into the field. Um, but all the skills that I have learned
Mm-hmm.
in my doctorate, I have been able to apply in so many different settings. Even as an entrepreneur,
There you go.
I have still been able to utilize those skills And so I would definitely do it again. Yeah.
Yes, that literally fed into my next question. What has the PhD enhanced inside your life outside of academia, and particularly those skills that you think were applicable outside your life or
Yeah.
outside your
Well, definitely within academia has definitely
hmm
been beneficial. Um, in the different spaces is within higher education, and outside of it, as I mentioned, I do have a practice that I
hmm
have, and so in that practice, have I provide speaking engagements and
hmm
workshop facilitations and trainings, and so I do some of that on campus, but I also do that outside of campus. And so I think having the doctorate, you
hmm
know, people will respect the doctorate degree, but I think it's also me showing up with the knowledge and the insight. So it's one thing to have it, but it's another thing to, as I would say to folks, showing my fruit.
There you
This
go.
is this is what I have learned. This is what I can do. This is how it applies to
hmm
whatever work or setting that I'm in. And so I think being able to do that, I've learned a lot, in my program. I talk about assessment. Assessment is one area where I easily can point to, and I talk to students about that, like some of the things that I learned about assessment, specifically learning outcomes,
Okay.
and how that applies even in my work when I'm offering workshops and trainings. I have to set up learning outcomes. I want people to be able to walk away with something, and so that's also what I communicate to them in putting together marketing materials or what have you. It's This is what you're going to learn as a result of
Excellent.
participating in this training, right? And so that's
Excellent.
one example. But definitely understanding staffing and supervision was part of some of my coursework. And so, of course, that helped me in the space that I was in at the time, career services and higher ed, and continues to this day. And actually, that's one of the courses that I teach too, is staffing. But I think that has helped me understand um, people, right? Because that's a lot of it, is understanding people, understanding that people are different and their needs are different. So I think that's been helpful too. So yeah, there's a lot of different things that come to mind when I think about the degree and the transferable skills that I obtained from that degree.
Excellent. Do you ever have to check people and say, doctor before my name? And I do this all the time. I make sure that when I know someone's a doctor, I put doctor in front of the name because I know they earn that. So I got friends on campus. I'd be like, doctor, like, Philip, stop doing this. You're embarrassing me. But I'd be doing that job like, good doctor. But I'm saying that because like you earn that thing, come correct. You better put doctor in front of my name. Have you ever had to walk into space and kind of just like walk into space and know that you earned a credential and you want people to respect that?
Not necessarily. There have been times where there may have been an email that comes across or something, but not necessarily like in a conversation
Mhm,
or, I do appreciate when people respect that I have a
mhm,
doctorate. And I also am mindful of the relationships that I have with people. And
mhm,
so for some people, our relationship may be a little bit more informal, and they may not use Dr.
mhm.
Higgins, and I'm okay with that. And so so yeah, I haven't had to do that, Philip.
Yeah, I don't know. I just feel like I'm just joking, but it's just like I feel like that's something that you're very, very proud of. I would be very proud of it myself. Uh,
Yeah,
I probably put,
definitely.
I'd probably put that job on everything, an email for a car bill or something like that. Doctor, like what? I mean, I got dudes in my frat that say like legit. They say brother, doctor, something, something, something.
Mhm.
They put that in
Mhm.
between their name for frat. Like you better come correct frat and call me doctor. Brother, doctor, not just
Yep.
brother, so and so. So I mean, I think it's just a matter of pride. You earn. A lot of people, whether I know titles and pomp and circumstance, but it gives you. I think what credentials do is gives you a certain credibility and a certain air when you walk in the room, right? I put on my business cards, MED, right? I got a master's in, but I put that on my business card. So I earned that. So I don't know. I just felt like, I'm proud of you. I already know you. I'm proud of you. I'd probably take so much pride in myself. So, hey, I got a part. We're going to roll into this show. I know you were super prepared. I know you sent me questions and all this stuff, but I did not tell you that on my show, we do a segment called Shot for Shot. So this is something that you did not get to prepare for, which is good. It's that you get to ask any random question related to this or not, and I get to ask you any random question related to this or not. Do you want to go first? I'll go first.
Wow. So just a random question.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's called Shot for Shot. See, I had to get you out there. I had to do it. So, hey, do you want to go first? I go first. I already had my question though.
Okay, you can go. You can go first, Phil.
All right. So, shout out fellow history majors. I love history, and you study history, right? I got a kind of a two-parter. What is your favorite subject in history? Like, a niche. Whether it was this population or this group or this experience. And two, how do you still fulfill that interest in history now? Like, what books you read or whatever.
Sure. So, when I was studying history, I specifically studied American history, and more specifically looking at the experience of Black people in the U.S. And I completed a senior thesis, and my senior thesis was looking at how Black people were portrayed in history books and history textbooks, because again, I was thinking about being a social studies teacher as well. And so so that was my area of emphasis at the time. And let's see, and how do I continue, how I keep it? Yeah. So one of the things, I teach a foundations course in our program, and within the foundations course, we do look at the history, more so the history of higher education, history of student affairs. And so that is one way. I haven't been able to fully get into the history in the way that I want to, or in the way that I've been taught, and so that's been a challenge, just trying to figure out the best way to do that. And so, but that is one way, because we're looking at foundational documents for student affairs in that course. And so that is one way that I'm able to stay connected. I teach a course around career. And so with career, of course, we're looking at the history of the development of career and the different theories that were developed. And so that's another way that I keep it connected in that way.
There you go. See, look at that. You and I'm smiling because I was like, you got that one. I was like, I definitely had that same passion, in regards to history. I love still watching documentaries. I love watching specifically documentaries that have a history focus. And it's just still like, I didn't think in the moment that overall discipline was something that just like, is something was interesting. I love, and the part of history I always loved was always the storytelling aspect. I always love storytelling. And I love really good storytellers, like how they deliver content, whether it's documentaries or books, where it's like I connected to people's experiences through history. And I was always dope to me. And then and come to find out, me and my dad was a history major. We're both history majors. Like, I don't know if it was just naturally, we both like to watch Ken Burn documentaries. I love, I just love, I can literally, if I pick a subject on Netflix, is either randomly anime, like I'm a big kid, or I watch a lot of documentaries. I love just how people thought and those things. All right.
Yeah.
Your question for me.
So since this episode is particularly about pursuing a doctorate, my question to you is, what would you be interested in pursuing a doctorate in?
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. So, my niche, Positive Philter. So I don't really know what discipline, whether it's like a doctorate with the counseling or doctorate with industrial psychology or a doctorate in higher ed, all those different programs. But I would know that in the core of my focus of my study would have to be well-being, and how well-being is included into that that realm. So if it was industrial psychology, it would be like well-being and how it's applicable to an organization. If it's in higher ed, how do we develop, a culture of well-being into a higher ed space? If it was I don't know, those are only two programs I looked at really, when I was like doing it for myself. But I would know that whatever that had to be, like whatever my dissertation or focus would have to be on that. And I think even particularly now I'm thinking about well-being it had to be included with blackness, like black and well-being. So like it was higher ed, I'd have to feel like, how do we incorporate well-being for black students? Or if it was an organizational psychology, like how do we incorporate wellness and well-being for our black employees? So it had to be those two combinations. But I don't know, man. I took one class. I ain't gonna lie, be totally transparent. It was super hard, especially during COVID. We started the class in person, which I love. You guess what part? I'll let you guess what part of the learning I love the most. It's not writing; it's the actual classroom discussions and talking to people. And so when that was removed halfway into the semester, I particularly struggled. I did not do well in a virtual space. I didn't do well just not connecting with other students. That's where I learn. That's my learning style. It's straight auditorial. I can do readings. I used to always just do readings enough to be able to talk. Like, I didn't read because I like to read. I read because I wanted to, like, if I'm going to speak up in class, I want to make sure that I'm like, and such said. So I know, like, sound like so sometimes I would just skim and make sure I would write like, oh, make sure I say this and drop like I read the whole thing. And so I don't know. I don't know what the future holds. I'm still exploring this conversation, such as for the listeners, is also great for me. But I know that no matter what my subject or discipline is, whatever degree or not, it needs to have the inclusion of blackness or black people, because that's something I identify as, and I want that to be the space that I bring to it. But also I want it to be like me, like positive and well-being, have some kind of focus in that, whether I had to, like, they don't have a class on it, so I have to make sure I make a study about it. I don't know, make my own lane, make my own lane in that. So I'm still figuring it out. I got to tap you because me, I rip and run. I don't have this stuff planned out. I kind of figure it out as I go along.
Well, we can chat about it, but even just you having that interest, knowing that this is an area that you would want to focus on, I think that's a good first step. And then just, like you said, exploring what programs, and you've thought about what is a good fit for you in terms of settings, online versus in person.
Oh,
So
no.
yeah,
No, I couldn't
so
do that.
that's
I could do hybrid going into it, but I could not do it with the, like, just getting ripped away from me like that. I didn't do well with that. Like, if I would have went into this class saying this is a strictly online class, I think I mentally would have been like, okay, I know what it is. But to switch pivot right in the middle, it jacked me up. I ain't gonna lie. I had my kids screaming. I'm trying to go into class. My son one time got on the thing during our little, like, class break and said, "Bye-bye, suckers," to the whole class. And I was like, I didn't unmute. I was just like, this is my life. So like
yeah.
I wasn't ready for that pivot at all.
Well, and that's understandable. I mean, it was kind of like everyone was thrown into doing that, right? Preparing your mind for that. Like you said, is one thing, even as a faculty member, knowing that this course is going to be online, but then having to do that with maybe 2 weeks of preparation, or no, some people didn't even have 2 weeks, right? It's just like, oh yeah, you just got to pivot. And so I think that does make a difference. And so paying attention to what works for you, what doesn't work for you, will be important in that process.
Yeah. Well, I got another one checked on my PhD mentorship lane, like asking questions, and obviously very proud of what you're doing, and just know that like organically, just how you navigate the world with your own podcast and the many hats that you wear is kind of like I said, I could see it. I could say, okay, Dr. Higgins got these many hats and still gets her things done. Maybe I could possibly do it too. So I always think I'm very, you're doing an example for me and helping me out just by being yourself. So That's great. So for
Oh,
the
well,
listener,
thank you.
yeah. So for the listeners so this is the part of the show. I call it shout outs and plugs. Shout outs means you can show love to anyone, your mom, your family, your kids, your mentors, anyone. Shout out anyone. And then plugs, though, I particularly want you to say the things where you would like listeners to follow up with you, because I will put the plugs in the show notes. So I'll keep my mouth shut, and the stage is yours. Shout outs and plugs.
Well, definitely want to shout out my family. They have been so supportive in my journey, professionally, as well as pursuit of doctorate and all my endeavors. So I definitely want to shout out my family, and I want to shout out those who help make it possible. I know you said, you see that I'm doing it, but there are people behind the scenes who are helping me doing it, whether it's friends who say, you got this, you can do this, that's a great idea, or no, that might be too much on your plate, or people who are actually making things happen for, like my podcast to be able to run, having somebody to edit my work, having someone to coordinate my social media. So I definitely have to shout out those who have helped behind the scenes, and those who, have come along and said, well, we want to be a part of what you're doing and what's going on. And so that has really helped me to see that it's great when collaboration can take place, and there's a team and like-minded people. So shout out to everyone who has been a part of my journey and who's been a supporter. And then if people want to connect with me, of course, you can connect with me through the podcast. It's Dive In. You can search for it under Dive In Career. If you are wanting to connect via Twitter, it's Dive In Career. Instagram is Dive In Career as well. You're welcome to connect with me on LinkedIn under Marian Higgins. So would love to connect with your listeners, and yeah, thank you again for the opportunity.
Well, thank you so much. This has been a great episode, and I'm definitely going to have all those connections in the show notes for people to follow up. As I said earlier, before, I already had kind of an agenda for myself that not only was this something I wanted to share with the listeners, but this was a great conversation for me to learn and process and listen to later from myself, so that I can, just learn from your experience. And I think it's so great what you're doing, and it's very inspiring. So listeners, please follow up with Dr. Higgins on all her platforms that she shared. And if you have any questions for the podcast, please call the hotline number, which is 571-336-6560. 571-336-6560. You can also follow Positive Philter on all the platforms that you normally follow. And also additionally, share and like and subscribe and get, the messages out here. This podcast is only as successful as the listeners that not only listen, but also just kind of put it out there for others to listen as well. So thank you, Dr. Higgins. Loved having you on the show. Let me know, keep me abreast to your journey and the next steps for you. And I'll definitely be checking in on your podcast.
Yes, definitely, Phil. Thank you. And yeah, I look forward to staying in touch, and look forward to future collaborations as well.
Thank you for listening to Positive Philter, a podcast that focuses on family, friends, career, with a little self-help along the way. If you enjoyed this podcast, please share it with your family and friends, and like the Facebook page, Spreading Positivity of Movement. Thanks for listening.